Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Canucks Conversation, delivered to you by the great folks at DoorDash. Where's your ding dong? You forgot your ding dong, Chris. My name is David Quadrelli. We're
I can't see you
by
talking.
DoorDash. Chris forgot to throw in the ding dong there. My name is David Quadrelli. This is the Canucks Conversation. But before I get to that, look, we're all off because you forgot to say ding dong. Never thought I'd see the day.
But look at the background here. The background that we have is beautiful today. There's some snow on the mountains here. You can see it on the back cam there. I got a lot of hair on the back of my head, so you can't see the crease in the back of my head, which is good. But the beautiful mountains up here and all the snow. We got snow yesterday in Vancouver for like an hour. And it's a beautiful backdrop today. And Lou's enjoying it. Aren't you, Lou?
Yes, Lou is in my place today. We should also mention DoorDash. Use promo code CONVODD, capital C, capital D's, all one word, CONVODD. That will get 25% off and free delivery on your first order with the DoorDash app. As mentioned, folks, my name is Dave Quadrelli. I'm joined, as always, by the man who built the place, Chris Faber. Our technical producer is Alex Allard. Sitting in for me in the studio live today is Lou the Elephant. Can always count on Lou for days that I can't make it downtown, which today is one of those days. But Chris, wasn't really a busy weekend for the Canucks, but the Vancouver Canucks are in Ottawa and had a morning skate, and I think we want to talk about it right away.
Nope, not right off the bat. We got to talk about
right,
what
do you
we
got
both
for
did.
me?
Well, what we both did yesterday. Roar Lions roar. BC Lions. We were both at the game there yesterday, having a good time at a sporting event, drinking some beers, having a great time. You know, I'm a big Lions fan. I got my Lions claw there. I picked that up at the game yesterday. I got my Lions blanket because it was cold out there yesterday. BC Lions, that was a lot of fun, eh, Quads?
You were surprised to see me in a G. Simon jersey. That was your first reaction when you saw me.
Yeah, I was a little blown away that you had a jersey. And the G. Simon, you can't go wrong with a G. Simon jersey, of course, at a Lions game. So that was great to see. But yeah, it was just a blast being at the BC Lions game, checking them out. They're going to move on to like some Western final, I believe, against Winnipeg. So they're heading over to Winnipeg. But it was wild because it just started snowing like crazy right before the game there. Like big, huge snowflakes here in Vancouver, which is not something we often see. But yeah, overall, just a blast. They put on a really good show. It's definitely a different crowd out there at BC Place than it is at Rogers Arena, and they were rowdy. It was great. It wasn't the most exciting first half, but it felt like the game was in the Lions' hands pretty much throughout. So fun little experience out there, that's for sure. Lions off to the Western final, says Knucklehead. Yep, that's it was good stuff. Exciting few plays, but I got a little CFL rant here. The CFL is supposed to be like this exciting league where offense is like blowing up, right? The receivers, they can run to the line of scrimmage before their routes. There should be a lot more deep passing attempts in the CFL. And I think there used to be like years and years ago, but it feels like now there's just not a lot of like exciting offense. It's wild to me that the NFL has so much more exciting passing plays when, you know, it's a smaller field. They don't get to run up to the line of scrimmage. I was a little blown away that there weren't more deep shots taken in that CFL game. That's my only little CFL bugaboo there.
Well, I mean, I don't have much comment on the actual play. I wanted to talk about the venue itself and kind of the atmosphere that we got. And I understand that you can't really compare a CFL playoff game where in my lifetime at least, there's more hype around the Lions than ever before. And maybe I was too young when the Grey Cup was won. I believe that was like 2011 or 2010, whenever it was. But this is the most hype I've seen with people my age and everything. Like, I'm seeing more and more younger people really being in on the Lions now. And, yesterday was a great experience. And again, I got to be honest with you, I don't think I've experienced that at a Canucks game in a long, long time, right? Like when we used to go, as fans, I had never really seen an atmosphere like that in a long time. And again, like, it's kind of a testament to where the team's at right now. And I understand that you can't compare a playoff game to whatever the Canucks have been doing for the past, X amount of years. But I really enjoyed it at the Lions game. I thought it was a really good time. I thought the atmosphere was great. And again, I know you can't really compare a playoff game to, a Canucks game, but, people that go to these Lions games all the time, They tell me that's kind of what it's always like. It's not always full like that, but the people that are there are making noise, and it's a different experience. Everybody's watching the game. Nobody's on their phones, like you see at Canucks games sometimes.
No, it was great, and I maybe it was the beers yesterday, but by the end of it, I was saying I'm getting season tickets next year. They're $20 a ticket pretty much for season, so that's going to cost you like $200 basically to go to every Lions game next year. I mean, come on, I'm going to get season tickets next year. I think living right here beside it's normally we just get tickets last minute and then just end up going, but for this one, yeah, I went like right when they were launching and got that. So yeah, good stuff from the Lions. We'll get to the Canucks in just a minute, but first I got to give a shout out to the good folks over at Canucks Reddit and congratulate them for surpassing 100,000 members over there on Canucks Reddit. So shout out to them. A fun community. I'll say that it's a fun community over there on Canucks Reddit. They just surpassed 100,000 members. So good stuff over there on the Reddit. They don't like you over there, Quads, but it's fine. They're good folks over there on the Canucks Reddit. They like the show. They listen to the show. I always see in the comments when there's always a post like once a month, and it's like, oh, blah, blah, blah. I'm tired of listening to radio. What's a good podcast? And we get a lot of shout outs on Canucks Reddit. So shout out to them. I know a few
I
people
like
from
Canucks
there will
Reddit.
be listening. Yeah,
They
I
like
know
me
they don't
too.
like you.
I like them.
I don't know.
Yeah, they like me. They like me now.
Okay.
They like me now. Okay, let's get to it, Chris. It's there at the ticker at the bottom. Another blown lead for the Vancouver Canucks. Where do we start? Like, where do you start with this game? I have some thoughts on this, as I typically do, and I don't really know where I want to start. Obviously, I want to start at Thatcher Demko, but I'm assuming that's not where you want to start. So I'll
Nope.
let you talk about the game, and I'll jump in with some stuff on Demko.
Well, let's just start with the first period was one of the best Canucks first periods we've seen in a long time, and I think a lot of that was because the Predators just they weren't there, right? The Predators just didn't feel like they were in that game. Shots were 13-3, and the score was 3-0 after the first 20 minutes, and at that point, it was like, hey, this is going to be a really fun night here on a Saturday night in Vancouver, and um, the interesting thing for me, and Alex, you can pull us up the heat map. This is something that it's just like, hey, the shots were so much in the Vancouver Canucks' favor. Let's look at where these shots are coming from. They're all over the ice in the offensive zone. Well, yes, the Predators ended up having quite a few less shots. I think they finished was it 40-35, I think was the final for shots in that game. The Predators are getting all their shots from a high danger area. I think this is something we've consistently seen from the Vancouver Canucks. So we'll get to Demko in just a minute here because, yeah, I think there was a few times that, he could have stepped up as he's done consistently in the past and been able to secure a win for the Vancouver Canucks. But it's not like you can put it on Demko. I think looking at what this Canucks team was giving up and the spots where they were actually giving up scoring chances and shots attempts, like, the Preds were just getting to the crease. They were getting so many shots within 10 feet of the crease. It's just ridiculous. And this is something that we've seen consistently with this Canucks team. UC Saros, like, he did come up big for them, obviously. Like, there was that one sequence where Sheldon Dries had about 45 shots on net in like 15 seconds. And that line was good. I thought that trio of Pearson, Dries, and Garland ended up playing pretty decent in the role that they're put into that spot. They were getting at least a lot more scoring chances. Possession numbers were good for them. But it did come down to the goaltending, so I'll let you dive into that before we get to Bo Horvat's shootout attempt. But Demko, it just felt like the game really turned when Saros looked like he took control of being the better goaltender in that game. Though he was, the first few goals, like, Saros probably wants to have a couple of those back at least. And an opportunity for him to kind of take this game over. That's what I felt like he did a little bit late into the game. Not necessarily being the best player in this game, but just like winning the goaltending matchup by a majority in the final 30 minutes of this game was what UC Saros did to me. And I think, I don't know what's going on with Thatcher Demko. I think it's going to be a very interesting next 7 days here as we are going to see 4 Canucks games. They're all back-to-backs. So you're going to see Spencer Martin twice in the next 4 games here. It's going to be very interesting talking point over the next 7 days to see what happens if Demko continues to slump. I mean, his save percentage sub 900 right now. Spencer Martin is coming off of a good game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Say what you want about what he did against the Ducks. They ended up getting the win in that one, whatever. I thought there were some pretty bad defensive plays there as well, but Martin wasn't really on his game for a couple of those goals as well. But the next 7 days, like I said, there's 4 games. You're going to see Spencer Martin for 2 of them. So I'll let you go in on Demko and what you saw today, or from Saturday's game.
Sure. So it's no secret that Thatcher Demko hasn't been good enough this year, right? Like, it's no secret. And again, it's not news that I'm saying this. So what we saw on Saturday night was two, guys who picked up Vezina votes last year, and deservedly so. I think I had both of them on my ballot, actually, and I think I might have picked Saros to win the Vezina this year. Anyways, we won't get into that. UC Saros is a fantastic goalie. He's an elite level netminder, and what we saw was him rise to the occasion after having a tough start in that game. Rise to the occasion and really shut the door. Again, 42 saves on 45 shots against for UC Saros in that game. Thatcher Demko, on the other hand, 27 saves on 30 shots. Now, the problem with Thatcher Demko in that game was that maybe he let in one goal that you kind of looked at and you said, it would have been nice for him to have that one. Now, with the other ones, those aren't really on him. But with those goals, you kind of look at years past and say, okay, usually Demko stops at least one of those, and it's the difference maker for the Canucks. So I'm not okay with this whole narrative that, Demko's been the problem for this team. He hasn't been the problem. The team has many problems ahead of him. I think just unlike in years past, he isn't the solution to all the problems that this team has. And I think that's something that's, been recognized by this front office. Jim Rutherford's even said it, that last year they got bailed out a lot by Demko and he hit a lot of their mistakes. Right now, he's not playing well enough to hide their mistakes. Now, do you fault him for that? Do you say, we need to get rid of this guy or we need to change it up? Because look, folks, like, people are clamoring for Spencer Martin. Spencer Martin let in 5 goals against Anaheim, and there was 2 in that game I counted that he would want to have back, that you kind of look at and say, it would have been nice if he had stopped those ones. And Demko, you really can't say the same thing. Like, Demko still lately has been the better goaltender. I still think you give Spencer Martin a shot, but, to the folks online who I'm seeing who are saying, give Martin the starting job, Demko's been worse than him. I don't think that's fair. I really don't think that's a fair evaluation of the games. And I think, Lachlan wrote a really good column. He just started it called In the Crease over at Canucks Army. He's going to be running it every Sunday where he kind of breaks down the week that was for Canucks goaltenders, for goaltenders around the league. He breaks down each save technically in depth. Does a really good job of explaining everything to those of us who maybe don't know goaltending as well as he does. So, again, like you kind of go back and look at those goals, and the article's up right now. You can go read it in the Crease at Canucks Army. You go look at those goals, and none of them are really on Demko, right? Like, there was maybe one, the one that sailed over his shoulder through traffic, that you're kind of like, well, it would have been nice to stop that, but again, that's a pretty perfectly placed shot through traffic that he couldn't see. It's just, I don't buy this whole idea that Thatcher Demko's been this team's problem. He hasn't been the problem. He just hasn't been the solution as well, which is really what's frustrating them.
Yeah, I think there was a couple in the Minnesota game that were tough ones for Demko for sure. But I think what you're saying is, and what I saw Kevin Woodley talk about today a little bit on Donnie and Dolly was kind of something that made me think a little bit more about it. Was there's so many 2-on-1s coming up against Demko, and he's just getting beat, right? Like, the puck's beating him to where he needs to get on the ice. And something that Demko had to do so much last year when I was thinking about this was like, he needs to cheat, right? Because of the defense in front of him, because of the grade A scoring chances, Demko needs to cheat for that. Right now, he's not really cheating. He's more sitting into his spot and not getting across, as fast, because listen, they're grade A scoring chances that are coming up against them on 2-on-1s. He can't cheat right now, but it's almost like to the point now where we might have to see him move into that role of having to lean a little bit more to the pass and go to the guy who's going to be receiving the pass on a 2-on-1. And I think that might even hurt even more, because if you do start to cheat a little bit, which is something that he might have to do because he's getting beat in the situations where he doesn't cheat, those 2-on-1s are just going to continue to be scored on, whether it be the pass across or potentially him cheating and being beat on the normal side with the shooter. It is all about the defense right now and about what they're not doing for this Canucks team. And yes, like, Demko sometimes made those saves last year. A lot of the time he made those saves last year on 2-on-1s, massive saves. And you're right, he's not making those right now. He's not going out there and winning them for him. But I'm completely in agreement of like this defense and how much scoring chances. Like, I had the heat map up earlier. How many shots are you expected to save when they're getting 15 to 20 shots off from that close in tight from your crease? Like, you can't be expected to make 95% of the saves there. Like, it is the defense here up to this point that's been letting them down consistently. I mean, it's not breaking news either. This is what's let the Canucks down for a long time. And I think some of these defensemen that we're seeing not being able to clear the crease, I think Stillman's been a really good example of it. you need to be able to at least just get guys away from the crease and not allow such easy just scoring chance after scoring chance against your goaltender, because you can't just rely on him to save you every game. And that's what we're seeing with Demko. I think it's tough. It's tough to watch.
Jeffrey Lee jumped in the chat and said, "Well, I still think Demko's been playing better than Martin. The team seems to have been playing better in front of Martin than Demko." That's fair. That's honestly fair. And like we
That's
said, it's
true.
going to
Yep.
be interesting to see what Spencer Martin does with the opportunities he's given. But I want to get back to that because you just mentioned it. The decrease, the decor. And Bryce jumped in and said, "This decor is tragic," in the chat. And I think that's a really good way to put it, because that third goal, that third Predators goal, the one that broke the Camel's back, was completely on Riley Stillman. And honestly, you go back and watch that goal, it doesn't look any prettier the more you watch it. And honestly, I think that's a good transition to the next thing we're going to talk about, because folks,
Well,
Riley
before we
Stillman
get,
was
I got
still at
the Bo
practice. I
Horvat.
know.
Show us it was, you can pull this up, Alex. The Bo Horvat shootout attempt. This was basically just putting like an icing on the cake and then throwing a bunch of cherries on top after. Just the fact that this was how the game ended on a night where you had a 3-0 lead after the first period. Bo Horvat coming in and just losing the puck here on a shootout. I mean, it just stick handling, the same move we've seen him do. We've seen him do this, 20 times in his career, right? This is the same route that he takes on every shootout attempt that he does. And just the fact that this was the night where he like touches it wrong with the backhand on the deke and loses it. It was such, for Canucks fans who have been watching this team, it's like, oh, is that surprise you had all that happen? Absolutely not. Like, that's how the game ends in a game where you blew a 3-0 lead, of course. Like, I don't know. It was a tough scene all in all. And that was, another night where, and Miller talked about this, because like the crowd at Rogers Arena has been up and down, to say the least. But it was another night where after that shootout, and for good reason, seeing how that played out, like the team was once again booed off the ice. And it's going to be like this road trip. We saw how the last road trip went for the Vancouver Canucks. Not well. This one's going to be very telling again for this team, who's going to have to deal with back-to-backs. And that's going to be another tough road trip for this team who, man, yeah, just another way to, and Bruce said it, OEL talked about it today as well. Like, feels like this team is really, really afraid to lose. Like, they are very afraid of a team coming back. And it's clearly like showing on their play on the ice in the second and more specifically the third periods. But man, like that is the worst virus you can have in your locker room right now, is like the thought of being afraid to lose. Like, man, you're a professional athlete. All these guys have won in their lives, right? In their junior careers, in their minor league careers. These guys have all won, and right now they're playing at the NHL level with the thought of being afraid to lose. That is the worst thing you can have right now in your locker room.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're seeing it with this team, right? And the results that's bringing. And the results ain't pretty. It's no secret, that this team's in trouble with their defense core. And again, the help, is it on the way? Like, where is it coming from? Because, like, Jim Rutherford's going to speak on Sportsnet 650 today, and we're going to break it down. He's speaking at 5 o'clock. We're going to break it down tomorrow, I'm sure, because there are people asking, who's making the lineup decisions here? Like, why is Jack Rathbone not getting in games? Is the organization worried that he's going to ask for a trade at some point? Because, again, I don't even want to make this about Jack Rathbone again. Like, Kyle Burroughs is more deserving of a spot than Riley Stillman right now, right? And I think, you kind of have to have it, like, as a, competition where guys don't just think that their spot is guaranteed on the team, right? Because right now, that's kind of what it feels like for this team. I feel like there's just not much competition, even though Boudreaux talked about, after that game of, oh, we've got 8 defensemen, that's really going to help us. When you hear comments like that, you're thinking, oh, well, changes are coming. And today we saw some lineup changes. And I think that's what we'll talk about next, because the lineup changes really aren't what we thought they'd be.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, the Rutherford coming out at 5 is perfect. I have therapy from 4 to 5, so I'll come out of there with a fresh brain, ready to be broken down again, whatever Rutherford says. Let's get to the lineup changes. Tanner Pearson is now playing on the top line because though we have the graphic for his stock going up, that's not what's happening in my eyes with Tanner Pearson right now. But in the Canucks lineup, he is going up like our old graphic. Pearson's going to be playing with JT Miller and Brock Boeser is what it looks like. Boeser still kind of talked about as day-to-day, but I think seeing him on this line with Höglander being an extra, that kind of indicates to me we're going to see him on Tuesday. Potentially you don't. Maybe you see Höglander there on Tuesday, but then Boeser comes in on Wednesday. Just with the back-to-backs, it'll be interesting. But I think because of like what type of I wouldn't even want to call it injury, right? Besser's dealing with like a scar that's opening up and making it difficult for him to play. He's heavily taped at practice. You can see there's a lot of tape on his hand right now. At least the last time that we saw him here in Vancouver. Didn't obviously see him in Ottawa today because I'm here in Vancouver. But that's going to be your top line. Pearson, Miller, Besser. They're not going to change the Pettersson line. You got Kuzmenko and Mikheyev on his wings. But because Miller moves to center, you're going to have Horvat now centering Podkolzin and Garland. And then the fourth line staying the same, Joshua Amon and Stud Nika. With, like I said, Huglander and Drives being the extras. What do you think about, I guess we'll start with let's go with the forwards first here. Miller back to center
Yep.
is where we should start, I think, because I find that, yeah, interest. I know they have to make some sort of changes the way this team is playing, but I don't know if moving Miller back to center is the thing. I don't know if that's the move.
You wrote about it in Scenes from Canucks Practice, which is up now at Canucks Army. But what Bruce Boudreau said, because he was asked about this, he said, nope, it wasn't a tough decision at all because we only moved Miller to the wing because he felt like he wasn't at his best and he wanted to get his game going. Now he's back at center, which is where I want to play him. That's what Bruce Boudreau had to say about the decision to move Miller back. I just want to quickly get to this because someone in the chat jumped in. Kevin Punter jumped in the chat and said Pearson on the top line worked out so well last time. Let's do that again. Tanner Pearson, obviously, as you said, finding himself with JT Miller and Brock Boeser. And again, I don't think that's really the Canucks' top line per se. I think they'll probably get the least amount of ice time out of all three forward lines, in the top nine, that is, excuse me. And I don't know, like Miller at center, I thought you finally had something working with Horvat. It felt like the team's offense was starting to click. And is that a great defensive line, the Pearson Miller Besser one? Like, is that something that
Oh,
you're comfortable rolling out? Like, I honestly, I don't really understand the decision, and we'll see if it's as simple as Bruce says, where Miller's got his game back and now he'll be a fine center. I don't know if that would be the change that I would make. I think that's a step backwards, if I'm being honest with you.
no, and I hope he's got a step back because if you look at I looked up some of the numbers and it's not really possession numbers that's the problem with JT Miller. Like that's not an issue. I think they do spend a decent amount of time, and obviously they had a negative Corsi when Miller was playing center, but they also had a negative Corsi when he was playing on the wing anyway. So I'm not really looking at just simple possession numbers, but more of like just creating scoring chances and also allowing scoring chances. There's a ridiculous difference between Miller playing on the wing and playing at center. When Miller's playing at center this season, he's on the ice for 28.25 expected goals. They're expected to score 28% of the goals that are being scored on the ice. That is not good. When Miller's been on Horvat's wing, 60%. They're at 60% for expected goals. Like they are expected to score 60% of the goals while the play is going on. That's very good. That is 30% higher than it is when he is playing center. That's not a good look at all. And I know that there were some tough games and there was, a lot better performances when he was on the wing, but does that not make there's correlation there to me? Like the fact that he's playing on the wing and this team's playing better, I'm very surprised to see him move back to center. And then similar things with the scoring chances. When Miller was playing center, his scoring chances for was 39%. Not good at all. You're not getting a lot of the scoring chances. And that's funny to me because the Corsi doesn't change that much. The shot attempts aren't changing that much. But the scoring chances are a massive difference, going from 39% when he's playing center to 57% when he's on Horvat's wing. It's much higher when he's playing on the wing, not just getting in the zone and firing shots on net, because that doesn't change that much when he's playing center or playing wing. It's about the scoring chances. It's about him creating. It's about Miller's line going to the net hard and also being able to defend their own net. That's like that. These little simple stats that aren't like crazy hard analytics to understand is the thing to me where it's like, no, he's a massive liability in his own zone when he's playing center, and he's much better when he's on the wing. So I'm very surprised to see this. I think it looks good on paper to be like, hey, look at our three centers down the middle. This is great. But just everything we've seen this season, it's not worked out well. So like you said, if Boudreaux said, now he's got his skating underneath of him, I don't know, where was that in the start of the season? Why wasn't it ready for the beginning of the season? Can we look back at preseason and say, Miller was was dogging it pretty hard in preseason there. Maybe that was a worry for Canucks fans when we were, doing the show back in the preseason and saying, oh, it's preseason. It doesn't really matter. Well, why wasn't it ready for game one when Miller was playing center back then, right? That's a question I think you have to have about Bruce Boudreau saying, no, it's good now. Like he's feeling good about his skating. Should have been feeling good about your skating in day one. And it's just something you're hearing from the Canucks a lot where it's like, yeah, we're learning a lot of lessons. We're learning a lot of lessons. It's like, well, then do something with the stuff you're learning, right? Like this team talks about learning things and learning how to win. How long is it gonna? How many losses do you need to have this good of a roster? These players that you expect a lot from, and just not get. Like I get so tired of hearing the learning things. Like, no, y'all are in the NHL, man. Like some of you guys have been in the NHL for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, right? How much more learning to win does OEL need? Right? I know he didn't learn a lot in Arizona about it. He hasn't learned a lot in Vancouver about it, but he's been around the NHL and been a high quality player long enough to like these. I don't know. It's strange to me. Just like a lot of the things we're hearing out of the locker room just don't seem to match up with a lot of things we're seeing on the ice. That's just what I've seen over the last little bit here.
Yeah, absolutely. The chat's very active today. People are asking if I'm in my bedroom. I am not. I'm in my office, which technically isn't a bedroom because it doesn't even have a window. But anyway, and then someone asked if I'm wearing my pajamas. This is a nice dress shirt. This is like a good dress shirt that I'm wearing. It's a nice one. I do all my headshots in it. It looks good. Okay, the lineup changes. Before we get to the defense core, Chris, you wanted to talk about the dog update. You had this in the Monday mailbag over at Canucks Army.
Yep.
That's 3 Canucks Army article plugs for me on the show today. So get into the dog rating because you went through and kind of broke down everybody's on the season, right?
Yep, full season, 12 games. Pull it up, Alex. We got the dog ratings from the 12 games. Did some calculations. I finally learned how to do it in Microsoft Excel. So we've got all the dog ratings in here, which is just, it's beautiful. It's come together. Kyle Burroughs leading the way. I don't think that shocks anyone through 12 games. He's sitting nearly 90 on his dog rating, which is very impressive. Dakota Joshua's up there, Luke Shen, Elias Pettersson. These players don't really surprise you. Pettersson's a little bit surprising because listen, the dog rating, it's about like, the dog rating's more created for grinders and created for like a Kyle Burroughs type, right? Like the dog rating, you should show well if you're Kyle Burroughs, but Elias Pettersson being 4th on the team, like he is working that hard. He doesn't need to have that dog in him because he's the skill guy, but he's got that dog in him on top of what he's doing with the skill, which is so impressive to see Pettersson coming at 4th on the list here. And that's kind of like to that degree, that's why Quinn Hughes at the bottom. Quinn Hughes doesn't play like he's got to have that dog in him. That's not the type of player he is. He's a finesse defenseman. So that's what he needs to do. He brings a lot of that into there. And that's why he's on the bottom. I wouldn't worry too much about him. But then I look at, Jack Rathbone, similar, right? He's not going to play a big physical game. He's 2nd lowest on the list so far. But then it's like Riley Stillman should have that dog in him, right? He's playing in the same role that Kyle Burroughs is. Kyle Burroughs has dominated in the dog rating because he makes a big impact in a 3rd line role. Riley Stillman should be playing that same type. He's sitting at 36, 3rd worst on the team. So I don't know. You tell me any interesting names where you see them ranked out here, Quads?
I mean, you already mentioned that Elias Pettersson probably shouldn't be that high, but he is because he has that dog in him. And again, like I think Riley Stillman's the one that stands out, and not to pick on one guy, but Riley Stillman, OEL, those are 2 guys that should be higher, right? Like Riley Stillman's supposed to be this, rugged defenseman, throws hits and is defensively responsible, but Kyle Burroughs is at the top of this team, and you've got Luke Shen, long ahead of him as well. And I just honestly, I just you want to see so much more. You want to see so much more from him, and you're just not seeing it. And again, like I don't know. I no surprises on the dog rating, I guess. Everything kind of checks out, I guess, partly because I've reviewed every single time that you've put them together for the stand sheets and everything. So I guess no surprises for me, but I want to talk about Riley Stillman. Riley Stillman is still looking like he's going to be in this team's lineup. And
yeah, first, before everyone in the chat's bringing up Ethan Bear, and he's coming in
yeah,
at 5th. Yeah, I've liked Bear so far. And like I said, like if you're playing in the 3rd pairing role, you got to have that dog in you a little bit, right? The dog rating's not made for your number 1 puck moving defenseman. The dog rating's made for guys like Dakota Joshua, who's showing well in a 4th line role. Ethan Bear, who's playing on your 3rd pairing and needing to have that dog in him to stay in the lineup. He comes in at 5th. I think that's a good spot for Ethan Bear on this team. Kuzmenko coming in at 6th is also good. Like he has been working hard and doing a lot of the things that affect the dog rating. Somebody's asking for the formula in here, not giving out the secret formula, but I mean, I don't know. I look at the results here and the results look pretty match my eye test on how I would talk about with the dog rating. The formula I think is locked in right now. So yeah, like I said, Quinn Hughes on the bottom doesn't really I don't think that makes it horrible. Just because of the way he plays, he doesn't need to have that dog in him, right? And the fact that Burroughs and Joshua are up there, yeah, we'll get to Stillman now because as you see on the bottom, still, man, it's I don't know. Another day where the lines come out. We're not in Ottawa. Shout out Thomas Drance, the one tweeting them out. I don't get. I just I thought that watching that last game on Saturday where Stillman plays like what one shift in the final 10 minutes of the game, like 3 shifts in the
Mhm.
whole third period. I'm like, oh, perfect. They something clicked with Boudreaux, and he needs like he must be aware. Okay, now's the time I've got to move to Burroughs or Rathbone. And listen, you and I have been on the free Rathbone train forever. I don't think that's going to change. Rathbone, I'd love to see him in the lineup. Not even that. I would rather see Stillman out of the lineup than Rathbone in. If it's Kyle Burroughs that goes in, perfect. Let
Yep.
him play on the left side. I am completely fine with that. Stillman has just been, man, it's the numbers are just ridiculous. He's got the worst goals against per 60 on the whole team. He's got the worst expected goals against per 60 out of all the defense score. His last game, he finishes 22% Corsi, 16% expected goals. Stillman has, like, in his time as a Vancouver Canuck, if you go per 60 in goals against, Stillman is on the ice for more than 2 times as many goals as Burroughs is. Like more than 2 times. So every like 30 minutes, how many more goals are we seeing with Stillman on the ice? It's 2 times as many as it is with Kyle Burroughs in the lineup. So as much as I'd love to see Jack Rathbone be given a chance here and not just sit in the press box and continue to not get an opportunity to develop, even if Kyle Burroughs comes in, it's going to make this team better. I can't see a world where either Rathbone or Burroughs doesn't make this team better coming in and playing.
I mean, yeah. Like, what do you even say at this point, right? And again, like you brought it up, there's better options all over the place. Like Rathbone, Burrows, you just brought them up, and like I don't even know what you say at this point because look, like I laid it out in the last Stanchies, the Rathbone Manifesto. I laid it out and I said, you've got this guy who, sure, maybe right now the difference is marginal between him and everybody else that we're talking about. Sure, maybe it's marginal in terms of the pros and cons of what they bring to a lineup. But you kind of wrote about in the mailbag as well today. Rathbone's the only one of those guys that has a chance to become a top 4 defenseman, right? He's a puck moving defenseman, and someone in the chat even jumped in and said, I love when we sit a puck moving defenseman for a standing still one. And literally, that's what Riley Stillman is. And it's not even just Riley Stillman's fault because look, like even there was a player on Nashville that talked about it last game in the Saturday night game about how the Canucks strategy is just, flip out the puck to center ice, go for a line change, and just hope for the best. And, they give up grade A chances all over the place. It's not an effective strategy. Like, you need to keep the puck along the ice. You can't just keep flipping it out every single time and hope for the best. It's not working. It's literally not working. It's just, it's almost like there's no real answer. Like, I don't think either of us are suggesting that Jack Rathbone or Kyle Burroughs is going to come into this lineup and fix everything, right? I don't think that's what we're suggesting. But I think that we're suggesting that it gets marginally better and it gets a little bit more stomachable. I think you're more comfortable losing a game if you gave Jack Rathbone or Kyle Burroughs a shot that we both think that they deserve than you are just keeping the same defense core and continuously losing games in just embarrassing fashion too. It's just I'm running out of things to say. I'm running out of things to say.
Like, so Jack Rathbone last year gets 9 games in the NHL before he's sent down to the AHL for the whole season. The year before that, he's on the taxi squad for most of the year. Played 8 games in the AHL that year. Played 8 games in the NHL that year. Like, how has Rathbone been around this team? And not only this this team, this Vancouver Canucks team, he's been around this team within what, like 60 kilometers, even if you just want to call it down to Abbotsford. Like, he's been around this team for 3 seasons and he's played 21 games. Like, I had to look it up today because I was like, how many games has he actually gotten into? 21. You're saying in those 21 games, including like the 8 in his very rookie season during a pandemic where the team sucked so bad in the COVID year, and last season where he played the first 9 games, you're telling me that in those 21 games, like, this team is already like, the defense is a huge problem. We can't play them. like, how do you know? How do you think that that's what this kid is doing when he came in at what 21 years old and was trying to grow this game, and also all the praise that he got from the general manager about what he did in Abbotsford last year, and how this offseason we heard from Patrick Alvin saying, no, he's like an NHL, he's going to be on an NHL roster, he's going to be an NHL player, and you don't see it. Like you either need to play him, but if you're going to play Burroughs, you better get Rathbone down to the AHL, make him play some games then too, because he's just going to sit there and do nothing. And I sit there in the press box and I watch Stillman fall over the ice and players skate around him and him not clear out the net well. And I just look back and I see Jack Rathbone sitting there in the press box, and I'm thinking, man, he wouldn't be making this many big mistakes. And that's something that's like I've heard this from Tyler Myers. I saw Bo Horvat talking about this on After Hours, but I've heard this from Myers a lot, which is funny that he actually says it because it happens a lot to him. But it's like they play a really good 50 minutes, and then there's like little stretches where they make these horrific errors. And that's what Stillman's doing to me a lot. It is these big, huge errors. He's making a lot of the similar ones that people have trashed Tyler Myers for in the past. But like I don't see, like, Rathbone doesn't play like his defensive game isn't like a boomer bust defensive game like it is with like Myers, and it feels like Stillman's the same way. And you're seeing a lot of like, not a lot of like success in that boomer bust mentality from Riley Stillman defensively right now. And it's like, listen, you have that with Myers already. You don't need two defensemen playing on a pairing together doing that. Rathbone isn't going. He's going to be outbodied at times, right? Like he's going to be pushed around a little bit in the corners, I think, by some big forwards. And listen, that'll happen to a lot of defensemen, but he's not, like, to me, he's not a guy who's like always out of position defensively. Like, you can't tell me in those 21 games that like every game he's been in, there's been like even one play in each of those 21 games where you're like, oh geez, look at what Rathbone did there. That is horrible. Have you been able to say that about Stillman in every single game he's played for the Canucks? I think absolutely. Like, and that's, it's, we've talked about this, I don't know how many shows in a row. And it's unfortunate that this kid who I think the best point you've made about this whole thing is he's the only one out of this, guys that he might be marginally better than or marginally worse than, that has potential to potentially be a top 4 guy down the road. And the fact that they're not giving him this opportunity, and man, it made so much sense today to see the change on the defense corps, and you didn't see it. Like, why is Stillman still there? It's wild. It's wild. Sterling brings up a good, like Sterling said it in there, Rathbone isn't the liability like Stillman is. But is he being played because the trade? Like, is that it? Is that why he's being played? Because they just traded for him and they don't want to make it sound so bad that they just gave away a second round pick to do it? Like, is that why Stillman's getting this long run? That's why it's going to be interesting to hear Jim Rutherford today talk about things, because I hope they ask him questions like that.
I think they have to, right? Like it's unavoidable at this point. And again, I don't want to speculate too much. I don't want to try and pretend like, that's not a possibility, but I also don't want to spend too much time talking about something that we really don't know. It's worth kind of noting and thinking about, I guess, but I think we need to find the answer for that, right? Because yeah, I mean, if it's Bruce making this lineup decisions and then you hear management say another thing, there's a problem there, right? So we'll wait and see what Rutherford says today, and we'll have a write up on it at Canucks Army, I'm sure, and we'll talk about it tomorrow as well. But again, yeah, we're just talking about Riley Stillman again. Like, we're in the same place, and again, like, Riley Stillman's a good dude. That's the thing that makes this so hard, is he's like a nice guy, and look, you hate to say it, but he hasn't been good enough. And when there's guys sitting beneath him in the lineup, we need to say something about it, because it's insane. Like, the fan base is losing their patience, right? And again, this is ignoring, we already talked about it, I know, but the whole forward line combinations today, even that didn't instill much confidence, right? And it's just, it feels like the same song and dance with this team. And I understand why there's so many people checking out in November, like early November. There's so many people checking out already on this season and, laughing at this team, just laughing about it, because they're like, I can't care enough to care, so I'm just going to laugh because it's hilarious how bad this team is and how they've gotten to this place through no fault but their own.
And I've seen enough people like say this. I think it started as a joke a week ago, but it's like, is Stillman in the lineup for the tank? Like, is that what it is? Like, it's wild to me that at least, and listen, we'd love to see Rathbone, because I think there's a chance for him to be dynamic, not in game one, but at least start to develop that. And even if it's Burroughs going in, I think Burroughs is going to be better offensively and defensively. So yeah, and that's the thing. Sterling brought it up, and I know they're not bringing it up in this way, but I want to bring it up in this way. They're like, oh, but it's nice to have Stillman in the lineup for that sandpaper and him sticking up for teammate. What the hell was Kyle Burroughs doing in all of his games? Was he not the best at that?
Yeah.
The best we've seen in years for sticking up for your teammates? Listen, he's number one dog on this team. He sticks up for everyone and not even like a question asked, right? Like if somebody hits one of your stars, Burroughs has already got the gloves dropped and he's going to back your guy up. He lives and bleeds for this Canucks team. Local kid, loves this organization, wants to be on the ice for a team that wants to win. I mean, to me, it makes, the sandpaper thing. I know that's not what you're saying, Sterling, but like that argument has been out there about Stillman. It's like, oh, but he's going to come in and drop the gloves at every time. But man, no, Burroughs is that guy. Burroughs is the sandpaper guy to have in your defense core. Absolutely. Yeah, he's a little bit smaller, but man, he sticks up for guys way more. That doesn't make any sense to me if that might be the argument from either the coach or the general manager on why Stillman's playing. There's just no argument in my eyes that anybody could make that says Stillman should be in the lineup over one of Burroughs or Rathbone. I think you could make an argument that there's arguments, I think, for say, hey, he might be better at Rathbone in these ways, which I don't agree with. There might be some things you can argue about him being better than Burroughs as a left shot guy, maybe, or something. But like even there, like I don't think you can make the argument that he's better than either of those guys, like, or both of them anyways. Like one of those two players should be in the lineup. And I don't know what it's going to take. Like he didn't play any minutes in the third period. He played 3 shifts in the third period. What else is it going to take? The coach sat him for the last 10 minutes because he couldn't trust him defensively in a game that was getting away from the Canucks. I don't know what it's going to take for Stillman to come out of the line. And I like almost just like, we almost need to put a ban on this for the show the next few days. Mm-hmm. Like tomorrow, nothing. I'm putting it down now. Tomorrow, we're not going to mention Stillman's name. No free Rathbone tomorrow.
We're reading the lineup, so of course we will. We're going to have to talk about the lines at morning skate.
No, I don't think so. We're skipping it tomorrow.
I just want to, before we get to the Betway wrap up and close out here, I just want to finish on this thought. The last time the Canucks won a game, Kyle Burroughs and Jack Rathbone were both in the lineup. And I wrote it in the Stanchies. You've talked about it. Jack Rathbone's played 4 games. The Canucks have won 2 of those games. And the Canucks haven't won a lot of games this year, folks. So, again, numbers don't lie.
All right, prospect report.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to start it off. Aku Koskenvo won his first start in the NCAA this past weekend. You didn't even tell me about that.
Yeah, well, I knew. It's up in here, 21 saves. Against
anyway,
against
I'm
one
done.
of my favorite team name in NCAA, the Brown Bears, which is awesome. And I think, didn't the Canucks win against Anaheim? Burroughs and Rathbone were in the lineup, were they?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so.
No,
you confused the hell out of me.
No. I think I've got that wrong, actually.
Okay, I thought so. I was like, I don't think they were in the lineup. Anyways, all right, prospects report. Let's get to it. The camp for the Four Nations tournament is underway in Czechia. Canucks have 2 players there. We've talked about in the past 2022 draft picks, Jonathan Lekaremaki and DPD Elias Pettersson. They're both there, and the games begin on Wednesday. So we'll be chatting more about that tournament. This is like, they should be scoring a lot. I mean, Lekaremaki should be scoring a lot in this tournament. Pettersson, I think, will play a lot of minutes, but it'll be interesting because it's basically a World Junior team. So we'll see how much Pettersson gets to play. Lekaremaki will get a lot. He'll be probably on the first power play unit. Hopefully he's putting up a lot of points because I think they're playing like Finland's U19 team. I think they might even play Czechia's U19 team. Like he should light this tournament up for sure because they're missing the 4th nation. Russia is not going to be there. So there's some U19 teams playing for obvious reasons why Russia's not there. Danila Klimovich, he's not seeing any time on the power play. Wasn't there over the weekend in Abbotsford. I think there's a little bit of a worry there. He hasn't been great this season, but for him not to get any time on the power play, that's unfortunate. I'll quickly wrap it up here. We've got a minute. Aiden McDonough, he had a goal and 4 assists on Friday. And he had an assist on Saturday. He is now tied for 6th in the NCAA for points. He played his 100th game for Northeastern on Sunday, and he's got 101 points in those 100 games. All right, Betway. We've got to be quick here, Alex. Pull it up. Betway. I got my bet of the day. Please play responsibly. Must be 19 years of age or older. Betway. Power play goal and an empty net goal in the match. Should be. What's going on here with this? What is this? Soccer in the match? In the game of the Oilers and Washington. Oilers have the second best power play. Washington, they're 16th, but they still have a good power play. And I think you're going to get an empty netter in this one. Last week we crushed it, by the way. Betway. And then my pre-built one, Oilers to win over 6.5 goals. The Oilers do that all the time. Their last 3 games, they've been the over. And Leon Draisaitl, speaking of the last 3 games, he scored in the last 3 games. So if the Oilers win, I feel like there's a plus 400. You're getting a good one here. Betway. That's it. I'm done.
Okay. I just quickly before we close out, and I will close it out here. Also, these bots in the chat, man, they're
these bots in here, they're all like, "Here's a picture." I don't see a picture anytime here. These bots that come in here, they got
Faber's upset that the bots aren't following through on their promises.
That's all the bots in here. They got everything. They're all over because we got so many people in here viewing again. A lot of people in here, and the bots.
Bots are trying to get people. Don't fall for the bots, folks. Okay, quickly before we close out, I should have said the Canucks' most complete defensive effort, the 5-1 win.
Bryce says he's a hot single right there. There you go.
Okay. The 5-1 victory over the Pittsburgh Penguins, that was the last time that the Canucks had Kyle Burroughs and Jack Rathbone both in the lineup. So I wanted to close on that thought because obviously I misspoke when I said that the last win. It was the 8-5 win against Anaheim that they both weren't in the lineup. I'm kind of dragging on now, so we'll talk tomorrow, Chris. We'll see if things change at Morning Skate tomorrow, but right now we'll leave it on that thought. For my co-host, Chris Faber, my name is David Quadrelli. Our technical producer was Alex Allard. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Canucks Conversation.
Lines, baby. Lines up. Go BC.
Thanks for listening to Canucks Conversation, delivered by DoorDash. Hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.
How about keep it to a